Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hi, I'm Jeff Bast.
You are?
Yeah, who are you?
Today?
You're Brett Amron.
Brett Amron. Every day.
Brett, I'm happy to be here. We haven't been recording for a while.
Yeah,
for some reason we were just
talking. Not some reason.
Schedules,
it's just been crazy.
Busy, a lot going on. In both of our
I've
lives.
missed you, and I've missed this arena.
It's good to be back. Good to be back in this room, in this recording studio with our good friend Nelson and another good friend and guest we're about to introduce. But before we get there, I was going to drop you a lob, an easy one today.
Drop me a lob.
An easy question.
That means it's going to be really
what's
hard.
something you'd recommend? Something that you knew in your life, and an app or a book or a magazine or a show or something you'd recommend to our audience, something you're enjoying or have enjoyed recently.
Actually, I mean,
our guest is pulling out his phone to look his up.
many.
Yeah, the supplemental memory.
Yeah, many.
Go ahead.
So I did a little bit of traveling recently, so I watched 0 Day on Netflix. It's a 6-episode miniseries with Robert De Niro and whatever. It's very interesting. Some tech involved in that, which we'll get to today. And I actually watched the first episode of a new show on Apple last night called The Studio.
Cool. Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Which actually was really funny. The first episode was really good, really funny. Right. So I don't have a lot of time. My oldest son is home.
Yeah.
Danny's home for the weekend. So he wanted to watch the first episode. So we did. But I usually don't get unless I'm traveling. So those are kind of new in my life.
Like it. Good. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. Not exciting.
All right.
How about you, Jeff? What's new? You're going to blow that away. You're going to tell me something like...
No, I mean, I have a couple of shows that we've been watching, but I don't think it's anything earth-shattering. Actually, the thing I'm enjoying most right now is I'm reading a book that was a gift from our esteemed producer, Nelson.
Was?
It's called Brothers. It was written by Alex Van Halen, about him and his relationship with Eddie, and I just am really enjoying it. I'm a fan, but I'm also a brother, and I love music. You know, it's funny. I'm really loving it.
So two things. One, Van Halen was my first concert as a kid, sophomore year of high school. Awesome. The OU 812 tour. Thank you very much. And two, Mr. Nelson, I also got a book as a gift from him. Mine was Malcolm Gladwell's new book. I don't know what that tells you. It tells us about what he thinks of us. You know, I got the Malcolm Gladwell.
We'll swap
you got the more exciting, the fun book. Anyway, I started reading that as well, and I'm enjoying it. So,
all right, I'm a fan of Gladwell's
books. That's right,
and I'm looking forward to hearing our guest's answer to that. But let's first introduce him. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
Our guest today is Dr. Hernan Londono. Hernan is a highly accomplished information technology executive and a cybersecurity professional with nearly 30 years of expertise.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it does. He currently serves as the Chief Technology and Innovation Strategist for Lenovo, where he drives digital transformation strategies for the education sector, and he provides strategic guidance to company leadership on market positioning. Throughout his career, Hernan has held dual roles as Chief Technology Officer and Chief Information Security Officer. He's also contributed as a board chair for charitable organizations and as an advisor to Silicon Valley startups and local IT firms. He has been recognized as an expert in innovation, AI, cybersecurity. He's a prolific writer and speaker. He has numerous articles and he speaks at national conferences on topics like crisis mitigation and digital transformation. The list goes on and on. This guy is a badass when it comes to technology. Welcome, Hernan.
Never been given that title.
Badass.
For the first time. So I am going to hold
technology badass.
This is amazing. Thanks for the introduction, both Jeff and Brett. And now I'm feeling old, man.
No.
30 years.
Well, you were one when you started. Just run with that.
You're not old because we're all in the same boat. So we're not old. So
speak for yourself.
You can't be old. We're not old. Exactly.
I mean, the audience has not seen us.
Experienced, not old.
Well, they will be seeing my white hair all over the place. I'm like,
well, you have hair, though. That's the key.
Okay, all right. Good point.
The key.
Good point.
But, to touch on that for a second, somebody was asking me a while back, like, you feel old. I kind of enjoy where I'm at right now.
Hey, listen, wisdom.
Right.
50s are the new 30s.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's what people say.
I like 50s.
I used to not.
You know who says that? The people in their 50s.
I know.
Yeah, yes,
I'm like,
that's okay.
I used to not believe these people, and
Right.
I'm aligning with you 100%, man. But I do feel 30s, although I don't remember exactly what I was feeling when I was 30. But, I feel good. So it's good to be here.
Good.
Thank you for inviting me. I think this is my second time here, not in the podcast studio, but I did do some tryout as a speaker for one of your events.
Yeah.
I think I may have passed with some maybe decent grade.
You made it through the cut. And actually, you were a speaker on a panel at our business forum, and we just started releasing the recordings from the forum.
That's right.
So your panel hasn't been released yet, but it will be soon. So by the time listeners hear this, they should have already seen your panel
All
or
right,
heard.
all right. Well,
Seen or heard, right?
Hopefully
Exactly. Hopefully
that's
heard.
come out good.
So tell us about your start in the technology and cyber security
In the
business
womb. Yeah.
30 years ago.
I'm going to create a parenthesis because I want to contribute to the question about, can you recommend something?
Oh, yeah.
Let's start with that.
Let's go there.
Start with
and
that.
then
Something new.
I'm going to put myself in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah,
I like it.
very. I'm telling you that right now. So you probably imagine I read a lot, and I don't read anymore. I listen to books mostly. And most of it is really technology-oriented kind of narrative. And there's days where, I'm fed up of this, man. I'm like, I don't want to read any more tech stuff. So I pick up whatever book. So I was listening to NPR one of the days. I got off in a plane and I got in my car and I'm like, NPR is the station that is like kind of in my radio all the time. And I listened to this guy talk about law. Now you're getting why he's vulnerable. So he wrote this book called Bad Law. Have anyone?
No. Who's the author? Do you know?
Elie Mystal, I think.
Elie Mystal. Okay.
Bad Law. And he had a super interesting position that I said, I need to pull the car aside and I said, I need to get this book. So he's telling the audiences, every law before 1965 should be repealed. And the interviewer says, but why? He says, well, because we are very proud of the fact that we live in a democracy. However, every law that was passed before 1965 was passed by only one group of people who did not represent everybody in our democracy. So
including the Constitution.
So the interviewer says, so your claim is that there is no good law before 1965? He says, no, absolutely not. He says that there are very good laws before 1965. So the interviewer says, but you're saying we need to repeal them all. She says, yes. And the good ones should be submitted. And if they're that good, they will pass with this representation that we have now. And I said, I need to get the book. So I'm reading the book. It really talks about, he narrows it down to the 10 really bad laws and the reasons why they are so bad. But there's many. And there's some good ones. And obviously it's a very streaming position in that, we cannot repeal all of the laws, but it's a good reflection point for all of us. So I'm not a lawyer and I'm probably in a place where I cannot pretend to be one, being that I am where I am right now. But I think it's a very interesting book for everybody to read.
Oh, that's
an interesting premise.
That is interesting. I looked it up while you were talking about it. It's called Bad Law, 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like the idea.
It may not resonate with
it's controversial.
lawyers for obvious reasons. You understand the law more deeply than any one of us who is uneducated on that. But I think the projection of what he wants us to think about is interesting.
Yeah, I think it is thought-provoking. Like you said, I don't think it's going to happen that way. Right. But every law gets reviewed, gets amended, potentially. And there are processes to make that happen by the current makeup of our society, right? Yeah. So there are ways to do it without the extreme, but it is thought-provoking. So I appreciate that.
Illustrate the point.
Agreed.
And a quick nugget.
Agreed.
But for the audience, if you find it interesting, read it. He wrote the book and he narrates the book. Always makes it interesting what the author also narrates because they put a lot of passion and their own voice. And I think he's very eloquent and he's very passionate. You can hear it in the voice when he narrates. So that's the contribution.
All right. I like it. Thank you for sharing that. And I like that it's...
Sorry.
No, please.
When do you listen to your audiobooks? I know you ride the bike a lot. Like, tell me.
Yeah. So 2 places. Airport is always a good place for me. And I spend a fair bit of time in airports these days. It's a good place for me to listen to things. Airport and airplane. So while I'm waiting, I listen to that. Sometimes I'm in the plane and I'm like, okay, I want to watch a movie. And there's days that I'm like, there's no good movies in it. So I'm just gonna listen to a little bit of my books. I am not riding a lot of bike these days. We can talk about that later. I had an accident at some point. I think last time I was here, I told you about. I was the victim of a hit and run. So that's done a number of things for me and the bike. But I'm running again. I've been running consistently. And when I'm running, I listen to music, some good rhythm, to keep my pace going. But sometimes I also listen to things. And that's the places where I normally find myself. Other than that, I'm not listening to books anywhere.
Other than the practice podcast, because we know you listen to it.
Yes.
Do you listen to podcasts while you're running?
I do.
What's your favorite that you listen to while you're running?
So podcasts, for me, I'm not very good at finding them.
Okay.
I am not.
Right. Yeah, fair. No, it's hard, right? There's so many. It's hard, right?
So I wait until somebody tells me, man, you need to listen to this thing.
It's interesting. I heard on a podcast today that very problem, because with most other forms of media, there is a sort of a recommendation. Netflix is really good about recommending. You watch a video on YouTube, it queues up another one, Instagram, all those. But podcasts, it's really word of mouth. There's not, and it's not a 5-minute thing or a 30-second thing. It's, it could be 2 hours.
So you end up in a channel, like let's say you end up listening to Practical AI, right? I don't know if you've listened to Practical AI.
I have not.
It's a good show. It's a good podcast. The guys are good. And then you end up in Practical AI, and nothing recommends you anything outside Practical AI because of the content. If you end up in Practical AI, you really end up in a line of reasoning. They're good, but their line of reasoning is very consistent. And I think one of the things that we want out of podcasts is we want diversity.
Yep.
So I listen to 2 or 3, right, down that line. And I'm like, okay, it's the same philosophy. I get it, guys. Awesome. You're awesome. I get it. But then I'm like, I don't listen to it anymore because it's the same line of reasoning. There's no diversity. So for me to discover them, I have to wait until someone says, hey, man, this is a new thing. And, when I listen to it, so that's how I find mine. And I tell people sometimes, like I just told you, Practical AI, for people who do not have a technical background and still want to get a little deeper into AI, I think it presents a good opportunity for learning.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so tell us tell us about your journey. How'd you get started in this space?
Man,
are you from here, by the way?
30 years ago.
Where are you from?
Born and raised in Colombia.
Okay.
So I'm a man of the Andes. I was born at about 9,000 feet above sea level.
Where is that?
Close to Bogota. It's a city about 150 kilometers to the west of Bogota. The city is called Sogamoso. And the air is very thin there. So if you're not from there, it's hard to breathe. But if you're from there, you learn how to survive in scarce environments, even from breathing, if you think about that. And you become very efficient. That's one of the things. I mean, it's in the DNA. And so you go places and you develop the skills for being efficient without even knowing it, right? And so I, transplant to the U.S. in the 90s, but time in Colombia, 90s, was difficult. Guerrillas and drug cartels and all of that. Like, what do I do? My brother left in the 80s. He was in New York. My sister left in the 80s. She was in Miami. I'm like, path is marked. So I went to New York. I originally wanted to be a chef. I thought I was going to go to culinary school. That's what I wanted to like. I love cooking, by the way. I'm not bad at it. I think I'm very decent. My brother was in New York. He was going to Long Island University in Brooklyn, Flatbush. And I'm like, man, I'm learning the language. It's really difficult. I was making progress fast, and he was going to school. And I really wanted to go to school. And I'm like, man, it's awesome. One day he came and he dropped a piece of a pamphlet at the dinner table. I used to live with him in his apartment, and I glanced at it, and it was like a computer science pamphlet. I don't know what computer science is. Again, born in the Andes, Colombia. I had not touched a computer, really. I was 25 years old. I had no idea. I mean, I knew about them, but not like,
right.
I'm not like, at a terminal doing things at 25. So I asked him, I said, hey, what's that? And he said, I don't know. Go ask. Oh, okay, right. So I go to Long Island University, go to Brooklyn, ask for help. There's a lady there. She happened to be the chair of the department, of the computer science department there. I said, I don't know what this is. Can you tell me what this is? And she says, before I tell you what it is, son, you really need to understand that for you to be a computer scientist, you kind of need to be a mathematician. You need to be good at math. It's not that easy. I'm like, oh, okay. Then she goes to explain kind of what computer science is. I'm like, okay, I guess culinary school it is for me. And then she says, you want a test for it? I'm like, oh, sure. When do I come? And she says, no, right now. Go to the back room. I'll give you a test. If you pass the test, maybe you can be a computer scientist. I'm like, all right. Going back, she gives me a piece of paper, 78 questions. I still remember 78 math questions. She says, you have 1 hour. Give me a pencil. And I got 78 out of 78.
Oh, nice.
She says, oh, I guess you can be a computer scientist. So that's the beginning. So she signed me up right there. She's like, you really need to be a computer scientist. So I became a computer scientist. I went to school in Brooklyn for a little bit. I moved to Miami. I went to school at Barry University. I worked there. And I graduated as a computer scientist, and then I did master's in information technology, and then I did a PhD in computer science, and then I did a postdoc in artificial intelligence. And all throughout that time, I was in the middle of the technology field one way or another. And you remember I was born in the Andes, did I say that?
Yeah.
And you remember I said something like, you learn to be efficient?
Yeah.
So those skills, not so much the technology side, because I'm not smart, but it was the efficiency kind of things that made me be maybe highlighted amongst my peers. Like this guy, when he writes code, he's very efficient. And his programs don't use too much memory. Mm-hmm. And then when I started moving up in the jobs, I was looking for how do we create higher density for this? And I moved into cybersecurity and like how to become more efficient about attacking the bad guys before they attack, things like that. And it was all that in the DNA. And, over time created this effect where people kind of trusted whatever came out of me and like kind of a maybe outside the box, maybe approach to many things. I did have a lot to do with AI. I think we're going to talk about that in a second. But throughout all these 30 years, I was exposed to AI in multiple ways, multiple times in my life without knowing that we were going to end up in this era with AI is so prevalent and so significantly impactful. So that's kind of the journey, if you will. And yes, it is about 32 years now.
Wow.
In the making.
So to what do you attribute your perfect score on that initial test? Had you excelled at math in school growing up or something? Or,
Very interesting question. I've thought about this before, honestly. So born and raised in Colombia, went to school in Colombia, high school from K-12 all the way through K-12. In Colombia, our education system, at least at the time I was going to school there, you never found gifted people in schools. That word didn't exist in my vocabulary. Existed in Colombia is everybody's supposed to do these kinds of things and everybody will do them. And we will make sure that if you graduate, everybody will do them. And these things included chemistry, physics, calculus, and trigonometry. If you didn't do that, you couldn't graduate, period. Now, I did not understand the language when I came here, but the language of mathematics is universal. And so I learned. And it had been about 6 years since I left high school until the time I went to university. And you're a little rusty. But
sure.
The essence of reasoning, you don't lose that. And that's what, these kinds of disciplines like trigonometry, calculus, physics, and chemistry gives you more than the depth in a particular discipline. It gives you practice with reasoning. And I recognized when I was taking that test that I could reason, that my brain mechanically works very good in solving problems. I'm like, sure, I can do this. And that's really that. I then learned that people here in our country, in the United States, have labels like gifted.
Right.
Because they know a little bit more math than others.
Right.
And so some get left behind and some others move at a different pace. In my time in Colombia, we didn't. All of us were the same. We all understood, some more than others. But, if you got that diploma that says you graduated, you bet.
You earned it.
You knew these things.
Right. Yeah. And I guess I take it that your belief is that categorizing people based on their skills or whatever strengths at that time is not a favorable practice. This idea of categorizing people into gifted and non-gifted.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a conflict with that kind of practice. In some ways, this is unfortunate. The categorization of people helps maybe further certain types of biases that play heavily along the lines of identity here in the United States, right? And I I am not going to claim that I understand the intentions of those who framed that. I'm not even going to assume that it was ill-intended. It's just, it is what it is.
Right.
But the truth is, the more that we use these labels, the more that we create these gaps along the lines of identity. And identity is not important the same way for everybody. Happens to be more important for some of us than for others. And so when I think about that categorization, it becomes a little bit problematic, especially when the idea of education needs to be democratized as opposed to fragmented. Right? The categorization creates a level of fragmentation that then makes democratizing foundational knowledge very difficult. And that's why I guess perhaps we don't advance at the same pace that we should, given our place in the world.
Well, thinking about it even so, jumping back for a second to what you were saying about categorization of kids when they're young, right? Or anybody in school, but usually it's that a label is placed, right? Here in the States. And it's like that kid now thinks, well, I'm gifted or I am not gifted. I'm not in that program. And so, and you start down that path instead of, no, you need to learn these skills, period, end of story. So I like that.
Yeah.
And you were very fortunate. You interacted with somebody who gave you an opportunity on the spot.
Yeah.
I mean, does that happen anymore,
I have experiences that are totally on the other side of that experience. I'll tell you that. Before I go there, it was interesting to me. I have two kids. My daughter's 28 years old. My son is 23. My daughter is a chemist. She works in a pharmaceutical company doing R&D. She wants to be a computer scientist, so she's now going to school for computer science. Very early, I recognized she's smart. I've always told her name is Emily. I said, Emily, unlike me, you are smart. She says she claims that that's not the truth, but I said it is. I recognize that in you. And so it was a surprise to me when I was called to a meeting very early to speak to their professors at elementary school, and they said, yeah, she's going to be in the gifted program. And I'm like,
what does that mean? Yeah.
Educate me here. Sorry, but I don't know what that is. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And, of course, it's an honor. And then over time, as I get to be more mature and I get to worry so much more about societal issues, community issues, then I leave that camp of being proud about gifted to join the camp of what about all these other people that are not?
Right.
How do we address them, right? And that's kind of where that's coming from. Listen, moved in life. I want to continue to be educated, and I'm looking for graduate degrees. Graduate degrees are a filter in society, and the filter is at the access to opportunity level, not even after you join. Right. After you join, you're like, hold your ground.
Right.
If you're good, you're good, but it's how do you get in? And again, not claiming ill intention of any kind. I got to, apply for one of my graduate degrees, and I am told, talk about labels and categorization. Like, this guy has really good scores in computer science. It looks like he can hold his ground. He looks like he has a job with a chief and the title, like, he must know something in technology. But Hernan, we have a little bit of a concern. I'm like, really? What is that? Well, English is not your native language. You have a family and you have a job. The probability of you really being successful in a graduate degree is not that great. And we are worried that it's an investment for you, and we don't want you to waste your money. So think about it carefully. I remember the day. Mm-hmm. I do remember the day. I've not been emotional in my life to the degree that I have to react to things right away, and I didn't that day. I really took it, and I said, let me reflect about this for a second. The short part of the story is, that I did a PhD and that I did a postdoctoral degree. So the answer is clear. The answer was maybe a 4-letter word that I cannot mention here. And then I am going to do it.
This is R-rated. Feel free.
So R-rated. My determination was to overcome the statistics, destroy the stereotype, and figure out later in my life, how do I help others not be bound by these boxes that we're put in and help advance? So, today I have probably about little less than a dozen people that I mentor in the United States for different things and different places and phases in their careers. And all of them all of them are minorities, all of them. And I spend every month at least 1 hour with each one of them. And they're making incredible progress. And that's all because I had that experience. And so I had good experiences, bachelor's, and then not so good experience in the entry, access to opportunity, and the graduate degree. It all worked out. I'm not sour about it. I think we didn't know 15 years ago, we didn't know how to treat these identity things that are becoming hopefully a little bit more important. And I think we're a lot more sensitive now, and what that means for every one of us.
So you said so many things that I'm intrigued by, but one is this idea that a graduate degree is a filter in society. And this conversation that you had with somebody who questioned whether or not you could do it, I wonder was this person trying to motivate you or was trying to discourage you? Have you ever thought about that?
No, absolutely. I think the mindset of this person was
good intentions.
Good intentions.
Right.
The mindset was, my God, we've seen so many people probably like Hernan not being successful, and doing a graduate degree when you're paying for it is not inexpensive. And so it was an awareness moment. That person, I believe, genuinely was trying to create awareness that, Hernan, you really want to buy that car? You think you can afford the car? I know it looks nice, but is that the car you really can afford? That kind of a thing,
right. Yeah.
In a good way. So I'm not. I think there was no ill intention. But I think, at that time in society, I tell you this, at that time in society, I don't remember hearing the word diversity anywhere. And I know it's a word that, we're trying to not talk too much about in society anymore, whatever the case may be. But at that time, we didn't talk about diversity. We didn't talk about identity. We didn't talk about how the identity and the diversity put together create a society that makes this country a lot stronger than it is.
Yeah.
And so we, as a society, we weren't trained to recognize that. So it was the other side of that is, well, your language, your non-nativeness in language for doing a graduate degree may become an impairment because you're going to have to write a lot and you're going to have to be on the best English you can be. Otherwise, your professors are not even going to want to read your paper, and then they're going to kick you out, and all of that good stuff. And by the way, you have kids, man. What time are you going to do the work?
Yeah.
And then you have a job, for Christ's sakes, right? Yeah. So there's lessons from that, by the way.
Right.
The lesson is, one of the things that I talk about sometimes when I do talks that are inspirational and non-technical. I talk about what do you need to do to overcome things that are in the way of success. For some people, success just comes in. It's there. Mm-hmm. But for some others, like myself and others, it's success. You really have to elbow around and you have to find it. And so I can give you something about that. And it's for those of us that are not that smart or that eloquent or not even that good, discipline becomes the most important tool that you can ever use to be successful. Discipline will help you overcome almost any weakness. It's not easy, but if you find it in you to be disciplined, you can get around, like I said, like me, very average person, not really smart. And I was able to accomplish what I wanted to do at the time, which was I wanted my graduate degree.
So I always say I'm usually not the smartest person in the room, but nobody in that room is going to outwork me. Right. And that's the same theory,
Discipline.
Right? Discipline, working hard, not quitting. It makes up for a lot. Yeah. Because, brains and lack of hard work, is not going to get you anywhere.
For a little bit of a joke, if we can do that for a second, I tell people sometimes, I talk to my students and my mentees and other people. I say, well, listen, talk about labels. There's a few categories of people in life that you find all the time. There's really good-looking people. You find them, you see them, you're like, hey, man, they're like good-looking. You have really smart people. You have very eloquent people. You have a combination that is deadly of good-looking, eloquent, and smart.
Yeah, you're sitting with Brett Amron right here. I mean, come on.
And then I tell people, and then you have the rest of us.
Right.
And how do we compete? Yep. How do we do it? Well, it's difficult. Yeah. And I tell people, if you're disciplined, if you have the discipline to do what you need to do, you may not win, but you will be able to compete. And that's access to opportunity, by the way.
Right. Agreed.
Access to opportunity is not, here's the medal, you don't have to do anything for it. Access to opportunity is you're at the table competing with everybody in an equal playing field. You just need that access.
Do the work.
You get that access, then you have to do your thing.
Yeah, coupled with a dose of humility, because you talked about not being intelligent, but you also got 100 on the little impromptu math test. So a little humility coupled with all those other characteristics, I think, also help overcome
I agree.
the obstacles to success. So the other thing you mentioned was mentoring. You said you mentor about a dozen people in different walks of life. Tell us about your mentoring. How do you become a mentor? Why do you mentor?
I tell you, it's a very interesting journey. I'm yet to mentor one person that I have myself approached, recognizing that they need mentorship. I have never approached anybody. It always happens after I am speaking somewhere, after people learn a little bit about my journey, and they come and say, Hernan, we know that you mentor. Can you be my mentor? And I always go through a process of, why me? You're not the only person that you've heard. Why me? So explain to me why me. Explain to me what you want to do, because I may not be a mentor for your next goal if it's not in alignment with my values and principles and norms. And then when we go through that, then if I recognize a genuine effort to progress in a direction that I feel is one that I can support, then normally I say, yes, let's do it. Let's figure it out. I'll give you whatever I have. I don't know, it might not be much, but let's begin to talk about things. And they're all different. Some of them, like, I want to get to my next job. Some of them are, I want to get my graduate degree, my terminal degree. I want to do that. Some of them, Hernan, I think I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to open a company. I want to be a CEO. There's all different sorts of things. And normally, all of them are minorities of some sort. They're either women, Latino women, African-American, Latinos. All of them have in their identity an element or many elements of minorities.
And did somebody provide this to you throughout your path? Was there a mentor that stepped up for you?
Good point. Yes. Well, I think I've been very privileged in my life. Very, very privileged that I have encountered people that have seen maybe a little spark and have done things. It was never formal.
Right.
I recognize it now. And, think about 20 years ago, we were not very sensitive about providing mentorship. It was more like, going to show you the way, Hernan. And it was like a little rough. But yes, a dear friend, former professor, mentor, Dr. Carlos Sigami, who incidentally was the very first person who induced me into the AI world. He was my professor of computer science. He was working on a project funded by NASA with another professor at University of Central Florida, and they were working in natural language processing systems in the 90s. People like, I don't care about that. Like, nobody care about that. Like, what are you doing? Kind of a thing. That sucks. And he was my professor, and we became really good friends. So he saw something in me, and then I ended up writing Lisp code. Lisp is a language from the 60s. That was invented for the purpose of artificial intelligence. And I learned how to do breaking the grammatical structures of the language to be able to recognize intent, to be able to recognize aim, and to be able to answer questions. This is 90s. And like Dr. Sigami is crazy, man. This is not going anywhere. Wisdom of this, remember he said, Hernan, is when this explodes, like whatever. So he mentored me. I remember I did not have yet completed my first graduate degree. I know, there's a formality in computer science that for you to teach computer science, you need to have your graduate degree completed. It's like, it's almost unheard of that you're allowed to teach computer science without a graduate degree. And I graduated from my bachelor's, and he came and he said, I want you to teach a class. And I laughed. I'm like, Dr. Sigami, I haven't even done my graduate degree. Are you kidding me? He said, no, I really want you to teach a class. I think there's stuff that you know that you teach. I'm like, yeah, okay, but what about the rest of the faculty? They're going to let me teach. There are PhDs in computer science, man. So I did teach my first class without a graduate degree. That pushed me into the graduate track. But he was an amazing mentor. But the person who hired me in my IT job at Barry University, John Bobron, he was the first chief technology officer for Barry University, and he gave me a lot of wisdom, not around technology, but around business and technology. And I did not, like at the time, I wanted to be a programmer. used to tell John, I'm never going to be at a table with a bunch of people talking about things and politics, and it's not. I'm going to write my code and I'll let you do my thing. And he said, you're different. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you don't know. And he used to take me to meetings in which I was quiet because I didn't understand much of what was going on, other than recognize the behavior in everybody about how do you do business with people and technology. And I was very fortunate and amazingly privileged that I was the second person to take the title of Chief Technology Officer. He wore the title the first time. He died. And then after that, at some point, I was the second Chief Technology Officer for Barry University. And that was an incredible honor. And his mentoring was essential in building the business acumen that I took with me throughout my career here and, when I was at the university, but also in tech companies like Dell, global companies, and Lenovo.
So you didn't have a formal mentor, but you had people who mentored you over time. And then later you reflected on it and decided that you were going to provide this.
That's why I called them by name.
Yeah, great.
Sometimes you ask people, hey, you have a mentor? Yeah. Who was that? Some guy.
My fifth grade teacher.
Some lady, whatever.
Right.
I recognize them by name, and they need to take credit for the good or the bad, whatever I am today, but they have that piece of credit from me for sure.
Yes, but you were receptive to it.
Yes.
And you took that and ran with it.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
This is the interesting piece. I didn't know what they were doing. I did not know.
That you were being mentored, you mean?
Yeah.
You didn't know you were being mentored
they were
and guided,
pushing me into tracks based on probably their assessment of what is this person capable of doing. There's something the person has. And, they spend time and energy moving me into that track. But also you need that, talking about discipline.
Right.
I needed the discipline to also do my work, to take what they were giving me and advance, right? And so I did that.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, so it's both. It's the opportunity and, seizing the opportunity. You were presented with an opportunity and you took advantage of it.
I believe all in all, if we talk about how do we democratize, how do we help society, I think access to opportunity is the number one tool.
Education and access to opportunity. Yes,
but
they go together,
right?
They go hand in hand.
But even today, there's people that don't have access to opportunity to be educated.
Correct.
So what needs to be democratized, in my view, for us to create some sort of upward mobility and maybe level off, society in a better playing field is the first thing we need to democratize is how do we democratize access to opportunity for everything? Mm-hmm. Education is one of those things, but healthcare may be another one. Doing business may be another one. All of that goes together. And that for me is the kind of the most important element. It's difficult. It's very philosophical too. Some maybe mystical. It's not something you can touch, access to opportunity. So it's hard to gain understanding sometimes, but I think it's a good concept.
Yeah. I suspect, and I know you tried to steer away from this, but the word diversity, equity, inclusion,
it's 3 words.
Equity, well, the phrase, DEI, I started to say it, but there you use the word diversity, but it comes with the equity and inclusion. That idea of access to opportunity is kind of goes hand in hand with the concepts. At least that's the intent.
Yeah, it is diversity, equity, inclusion, very important for me. Personally, we're probably at a time in our lives where there is a little bit of an obstacle for you to advance the narrative if you are representing, if you're the agent of a company, right? So I have to be mindful of the fact that I have a job, which I like very much, and I represent a company, and companies have to abide by certain rules and remove risk when it is necessary. So I'm very mindful about where and how I share my very personal ideas about diversity, equity, and inclusion, including this setting, which is very safe because, yes, we talked about who I am and who I work for, but this conversation has been so human that I think your audience will gain that the person you're talking to is not the chief strategist. You're speaking with Hernan, who was born in Colombia and has happened to have a set of experiences. And so I can tell you without a doubt, diversity, equity, and inclusion are things that I very much believe in.
Right.
And I think need to be advanced responsibly and in a very organized way.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's pretty compelling arguments for them, but certainly in your fields of expertise, besides technology, but education and healthcare, right? I mean, those are the two you mentioned, and those happen to be sort of your background.
Yeah, I've been in those worlds for a long time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like if you think about healthcare, for example, it's one of the places where you see access to opportunity not being at a level where everybody can benefit from this. And this is not education. This is access to our healthcare.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
should be fundamental.
Such a foundational thing that almost should be, I don't know why it's not, in some Bill of Rights or some element of the Constitution. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's not. It's not something that we recognize as clearly as the right to free speech. Yeah. Shouldn't we have the right to be healthy? I don't know.
So this conversation has been fantastic. But I did want, before we let you go, I did want to ask one question around your expertise and sort of the South Florida technology.
Yes.
And tie it into access to opportunity. And that is, what do you see as coming next? Everyone's AI. And I know there's a lot to talk about with AI, and we don't need to get into everything, but what do you think is like the thing that we're going to see coming out of technology that may aid and assist with access to opportunity?
That's a difficult question.
That's a good one.
That's a loaded one. You may have to edit this at some point, audience, if you don't need this. I tell you why. So I'm going to answer in a reverse way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can make my way into a good answer, honestly. This past Saturday, I was speaking at an event called the Agentic AI Summit. You probably know a little bit about AI agents. And so, but if you don't, and for the audience, those of you who are non-technical, we're right now in a place in the AI journey where the AI is making a lot of recommendations to us as humans. And we are still having the ability to make decisions about what we want to do with the recommendation. But we do know that AI is capable of not just the recommendation, but is capable of acting on our behalf. So agents are very autonomous pieces of AI. Mm-hmm. Right? And we're studying in some things that are very simple, like, for example, using an agent to take a workflow, take the intake of a customer and just take all the documentation and all the pieces of information and then take that customer, an AI agent, and approve something for that customer without a human ever be involved in it. Because that workload or that workflow is so repetitive and is so well understood, and the effect is minimal. An agent can do it. But if an agent can do that, conceivably an agent can be a healthcare agent who knows all your medical history. And when you're sick, you can actually access the agent, and the agent can say, we're going to prescribe this for you. Go get it. The agent can actually send the prescription to the pharmacy, and you go get the prescription in the pharmacy. And what that does, if you think about this for a second, is it removes the human from the loop. Agentic AI, which is what I was telling my crew in the conference, it's nice that we have this autonomy now with these agents can do so many things for us without us having to do anything. But then we're removing the human from the loop. Yeah. There's places where that makes total sense.
Right.
Cybersecurity is a place where you need to be nimble, quick, and effective. And the more you put the human in the loop to make decisions, the less effective you may be because it adds latency and the attacks will, advance faster. So yes, there's places where agentic AI makes sense, but we're now using agentic AI for everything. So I'm yet to see a really good advance in AI that is pushing us in a way where access to opportunity for humans is better. Not everything, take that back. Most of what's happening with AI right now is happening on the basis of efficiency in a world that was permeated by humans. So when you create efficiency, effectively what you're saying is you humans are ineffective.
Minimize.
And inefficient.
Right.
So we need to remove you and be efficient. And we care about that because everything that we do is on the basis of valuation of companies, improvement in the GDP of countries. That's the metric we're using. I think at some point we're going to come head to head with that concept that, hey, what do we do with all these humans? If we have one more minute, I'll give you an example of something that is happening in another country. Yeah. Japan is a place where I think I was here speaking at your event and I mentioned that. Japan, too many old people and too few young people to take care of the old people. And they're having to resort to using robots. And they think that the robots in their current form, lacking emotional intelligence, are going to be very ineffective in creating a good environment where the elderly population can be taken care of. So we're now having what we've seen in the movies, which is robotics and AI converging into a field, and AI advancing and mimicking emotional intelligence so that we conceivably can create these humanoids that are going to be very likable by people because they not only are smart and capable of doing physical things, but they also are capable of showing emotional intelligence. And that is a place where we don't have humans, and the AI is creating a really good environment for some people that really need that. That's an isolation case. I don't know that is happening for all the things, but that's a case that is worth mentioning.
Amazing.
What a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I want more.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to recommend to our viewers, to our listeners, to listen to the episode. We'll put the episode number in the show notes, but Hernan spoke on a panel about this very topic and mentioned that piece
I think that
as
was
well.
my test to make it into the having access to opportunity for this podcast. Pass with good grades.
Test. I'm not sure. Yeah, but you got, if it was a test, you got 100 again. So thank you for coming back. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the show, give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Hernan.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Nelson,
you so much,
enjoyed this
Hernan. Thank you,
conversation.
Nelson.
Thanks, man. Jeff.
Brett, thank you.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @FastAmron.